Alright, hello and welcome to Ethan's Garage. Today you join me on another Junkyard tour, which is pretty exciting. I actually came out down here to do a Junkyard tour and actually get parts for my car, but I just looked at the car that's here in inventory, and the part I'm looking for is completely gone, so I'm kind of bummed. But we are down here at a very big junkyard down here in Chula Vista, which is basically like San Diego if you don't know the area. And we're actually very close to the Mexican border. The Mexican border is maybe 5 or 10 miles over there, so it's an interesting little spot, and it's actually pretty nice landscape here, honestly. Look here, we even have trees, which is pretty luxurious for a junkyard. But that being said, I've already walked around a little bit, and there is some very cool stuff here. So let's dive right in and take a look at what they got. It's pretty interesting. Let's start right here with this nice old Accord. This is when, I think this is the last generation of Accords that had the pop-ups, which makes sense. I don't know if these were actually outlawed or if they just fell out of fashion, but obviously harder to do modern crash protection with that and aerodynamics, but super cool nonetheless. And this one even appears to be possibly carbureted. This here is a Mazda MPV, not a very interesting car, but I was just realizing that I don't think I've ever actually looked at one of these up close, ever. I don't think I've ever driven one, been in one, or really done anything with them. And it's interesting. It's actually pretty much like most minivans, which is not too surprising, I suppose. This is, I'm guessing, like 2000... anywhere from 2001 to 2005, I have to guess. Pretty decent tan interior. Actually, pretty nice interior overall. I'm curious if this is a parts sharer or model sharer at its core with any Ford, or if this is much more of a distinct Mazda model. But it's interesting. Always like checking things out for the first time. And also, how out here in Southern California are you getting rust? Although, I do remember I had a friend who had a Mazda from 08-ish, and that was one of the rustiest sort of modern era cars I've ever encountered. It was astoundingly rusty. Also, it's very windy here today, so hopefully the wind doesn't mess up the audio too much. I've tried to mitigate it as much as possible, but bear with me if it does get a little bad, but it shouldn't be too bad, I think. And I guess this is just going to be a day for discovering minivans I'm not familiar with. This is a Oldsmobile... what's the model name on this? Oldsmobile Silhouette. Oh yes, if I remember correctly, the Silhouette first generation was the very funky wedge-shaped, looked like a dustbuster. This is, I think, a much less interesting, but still a minivan I don't think I've ever really looked at before at all. Could this be 3 for 3 right here? This is an old Mazda, I think probably an MPV. It's kind of funny they named it that, because it's basically the same as calling a van kind of thing. MPV is just the more Euro term for it. Missing badges, but I'm guessing that's what this is. If not, let me know in the comments. This one, if I had to guess, was probably either just a terrible owner or possibly like a kind of a farm owner. Like, I know some people use these basically to haul around like goats and stuff, and it looks like there's a lot of that back here. But interesting, and also from the interesting early era of minivans when they were non-sliding doors like the early Honda Odysseys. And man, that thing is filthy. We have here an incredibly sad Lexus SC 430. Which, if you've never seen the Jeremy Clarkson video where he goes on a mission to find the worst car ever made, it's worth watching. Spoiler, I think this was basically the winner, which is interesting. But I won't spoil it too much. Worth a watch. Pretty funny as always. And we've got right here a Honda Passport. Pretty nice little truck. And of course a nameplate that has recently returned, which has been not what I was expecting, but honestly, you know, with the move toward kind of like the Bronco Sport rugged crossover, it's pretty logical that this came back. This here's a pretty epic vehicle, an old Chevy El Camino with some very safe looking glass. I mean, ooh, I'd love to have that fly at me in a crash. But that aside, I wish somebody would bring back proper Utes to the US. I've seen people bring in, through very complicated means, some of the Holden, like even 2000s era, 2010s era Utes. So amazing. But this thing is still such a beast. So this here is the car that I actually came here to get parts off of. This, I think like 2001-ish Echo in this really nice green color, which if I ever repaint my car, I'll consider maybe doing that. And I came for seats. You might be able to see what the problem here is. They're all gone. So, kind of bummed by that, because the one true problem with my car is that the seats on the driver's side are, it's just terrible. It's super, super beat up. They're one of the cheapest parts of the car, but I'll do a whole review at some point and kind of go over that in more depth. But I'll find them eventually, but so far, didn't work out. But honestly, I think it wouldn't have worked out anyways, because this is a slightly different interior color, which means the seats are slightly different, which I didn't see in the photo, because the photo wasn't great online, so, no biggie in the end. Got here an early Lexus ES, which were such nice cars. Even look at this, frameless windows. There was actually an entire previous generation to this from 89 or so, which are extremely rare. They only were in production for like a year or two. We got here a Chrysler Fifth Avenue. Wow, those are such fun seats. It's a pretty interesting Nevada plate right there, Mama 12. I gotta ask at the front of one of these places and see if you can get the license plates from here, because I'd like to start collecting more license plates and maybe even incorporating some license plate content on here, because that stuff is epic. And look at this, Jaguar XF. In, sort of okay shape. Man, I was such a big fan of these when they first came out. So whenever I see a Mercedes R-Class, I always check to see if it's an R63 AMG. Which, you know, it basically never is, because I forget how many, like 150 or something they made. Something just ridiculously low production. I think I saw one R63 AMG once, but someday maybe I'll get the chance to buy one, which would be just amazing. But weird cars are R-Class. Though when you lower them, they actually look pretty decent, but they're kind of a bit lame in normal spec. And such an interesting interior in these old Volvo 240s. Nice and boxy and square. So I'm going to show you guys an interesting car I saw on the way in here, which is this. The quite rare Cadillac Catera, also known as the Opel Omega. An interesting example of a European-built American car. These are a definite rarity, although I remember somebody in one of my first college classes had one of these, which I remember being so confused at the time of like, what is that thing? Which I think is where I first learned about them. And, you know, they're honestly pretty nice. I'd love to get one of these someday. It's another one of these definitely you gotta be a car guy kind of cars to want one of these, but they are kind of great, you know, if you like that kind of stuff. But it's interesting actually being on the inside of this. It's, yeah, pretty European feeling actually. And I remember like a year or two ago when I first went to Poland, spotting one of these, or an Opel Omega on the road and be like, wow, I finally saw the original vehicle for it. We even got right here the Cadillac Catera owner's manual. I remember Doug DeMuro did a nice video on one of the Cateras at one point. So speaking of Poland, my first time in Poland, I rented a 1-liter, technically a hybrid, Fiat 500, which is also kind of cool because they're made in Poland for Europe. They're made in Mexico for the US. But they're funny cars. They're very, very charming, like everything Stellantis FCA makes, but definitely a bit terrible. Just a lot of the way things fit together, and also the safety of these is very not good. I've seen a lot of these crashed at junkyards, and they're always terrifying to see. And we have here the Honda Element, a car that I've grown fonder and fonder of as time has gone on. Such a brilliant design, basically just a powertrain out of a CR-V, but a lot of people have been doing camper conversions with these recently, and like just so many great design aspects, like the seats that fold up to the side instead of forward, so you got a totally flat floor, very much like a van in here, but also with some kind of crossover economical parts to it. Lots of cost cutting, but wonderful measures. They even come with a manual sometimes. And for some reason, just like the video I did pretty recently, which hopefully you've seen already, if not I will link it up here, of a Junkyard in Los Angeles, we have yet another like 2008 or 2007 gray 2-door Golf and or Rabbit. I always forget which. Except this one has a manual. But I literally saw 3 exactly identical ones just like this at that junkyard, so we'll see if I have that today as well. And of course, wood-sided PT Cruiser in purple. With, oh wow, look at that. Oh, that's fantastic. That is, wow, peak style right there. Bring this car to Milan and have it walk the runway. So if one of you guys knows more about PT Cruisers than I do, was this a factory option? I think it was, but I'm not entirely sure. So let me know if you know the answer to that. We got here the first generation Mercedes SLK compressor, aka supercharged. Pretty great car. I mentioned in my last video this car, but these are the first car, at least that I know of, to bring in the trend and have the folding metal hardtop. And these AMG wheels are lovely. And speaking of supercharged Mercedes, we got another compressor. This is a I want to say it's like a C230, the weird coupe thing. Maybe, and yeah, probably one of the weirdest newer Mercedes made. It smells so economy car in here for Mercedes. Definitely a strange vehicle, though always kind of charming in its own odd way. Wow, check this out. I always forget the generation name for this one, but I think middle, late 90s, or maybe early 90s, BMW 7 Series. This is a 750 IL. I remember seeing one of these at a junkyard in Virginia. Another video you should check out. But they definitely have an incredibly distinct rear end to them. Fun looking car though. We got the old Nissan pickup. I thought this was actually a Datsun pickup at first, but not really like there's much difference. But this one has the king cab. Amazing. And this is a car you don't see in junkyards too often. The old BMW Z3. Sad to see it here. And look at that red steering wheel, which looks definitely done by the owner, not factory. Well, it may be factory. Hard to tell. R.I.P. It's a good looking color on this Ford Edge. Though, not especially remarkable vehicles other than the nice paint color. I see a fun old truck right here. What kind is this? I'm thinking probably Datsun, maybe Toyota. Let's see. No, still not sure. I'm sure one of you guys watching is already 100% sure. Let's see at the front. Still don't know. So right here it says Isuzu, so I'm thinking I might be going the wrong direction with my guesses entirely. In fact, this could be a Chevy Courier. Or no, is that Ford Courier? I'll have to look this up. Let me know in the comments if you know what this thing is. And also, I can't go without pointing out that. Isn't that incredible? We've now migrated over to the truck section. Whoa, check out this interior. Very old. Looks like possible mouse poop. And super dated, but what a special thing. So much wood, too. And right here we got a Toyota Sequoia. A vehicle I feel like I don't really see too often at junkyards. Probably in part due to the fact that they don't really break. They go kind of forever. They got the, this generation has the 4.7 V8 in it, which has some amazing oil pumping methods to really get this thing like especially well lubricated. One of the many reasons why it lasts forever. But awesome vehicles. And interesting wheels in this one too. I'm actually surprised nobody's taken those yet. Those seem like a great find. So just like I did in my last video, I should point out the watch I'm wearing today. I am wearing my Marathon Navigator, a very cool, as you can see, US government issued watch. I'll have to do a whole review on this thing because this thing is incredible. But yeah, kind of a fun one for today. We have a great lineup of cars right here. We got this nice burgundy Volvo 240 wagon in much better shape than the other Volvo 240. And surprisingly, we got another BMW Z3, this time in this fun blue. Then we got the early Saturn SL, and, I'll show you this, Infiniti QX4. These are excellent and extremely undervalued vehicles. This is based on a Nissan Pathfinder. Essentially 100% the same vehicle, just with a much upgraded interior. That is, when they're intact. This looks to be another quite old Oldsmobile. And we got another Mazda MPV. This is in the area you can't go into, but wasn't expecting to see any of these, let alone more than one. These are kind of peculiar cars, at least to me. The Infiniti G20, one of the very early, I think like 90s era Infinitis. So it's sort of the infancy of that brand. And it's actually, I think, a decent enough car, but definitely a lot different than kind of modern Infinitis. And I don't think they were huge sellers, and you definitely don't see them on the road too much today. Man, the seats in these early Crown Vics are fantastic. These are always easy to spot because they were the only ones, unlike the newer ones, that had the window at the back. And to add on to the two Z3s I saw, here is a Z4. Not a car I've liked as much. I never liked the look of them too much. And especially not with an auto. And this whole era of BMWs I never liked. I think this might be a Mustang 2. I'm not entirely sure though. I'm liking the blue on blue though, that's pretty fun. I'm gonna bring you guys back over here now because there is two pretty special cars down here. One that I know what it is, and the other one I'm not really sure. Check out the old Jag. This one even has a Coast Guard registered vehicle sticker on the front, which is a very San Diego thing. I wonder if this is the V8 or V12? I think it is V12. These are very fun cars. Hard to open door. And very nice inside, but truly have some of, from what I've heard, the absolute worst build quality of almost like any vehicle ever made. I've heard people have just the most terrible horror stories of these, especially with the V12. But they do look good, and I'm sure when they're in good shape, they're probably awesome. And the guy who had this probably took relatively good care of it while he had it. You can see Dynamat in there. But obviously, like many of these, it's now here at a scrapyard. So weirdly, these Mitsubishi Outlanders, I thought I was seeing double one time when I went over to Europe. Because in Europe, they actually sell these, I forget if they actually sell them as Mitsubishis too, but they sell them over there as Peugeots. So, not a car you would have expected to get rebadged as Peugeot, but here it is. The Mitsubishi Outlander. And now for the gem of the whole junkyard. Just past this new Beetle, we have whatever this thing is. My first guess was a Zimmer, but then some of the other stuff on it looked like it might not be. Incredibly weird. Let's close this up. You can see right there, Toyota Cressida. Has a bunch of things all around that say Paragon, so if you know what that is, I'd love to learn. Let's see, push down belt release lever. Of course, it's also very 90s. It has the automatic seat belts. Wow. What an incredibly bizarre car. Let's see Paragon in there. Some Toyota logos. Very strange. Yeah, I'm actually, the more I look at this, the more confused I get. Because honestly, I could see this stuff being a Cressida with extra parts on it, but maybe it's something else. And boy, that's a lot of not so desirable stuff in there. So, I'll definitely be looking this up later. Right here we got this nice color on this actually pretty good shape Isuzu Trooper. I never noticed that before. Maybe I just never saw it before. The angled window switches. That's surprisingly ergonomic for a non-sports car. Pretty nice in here. So we got here this old Mitsubishi Galant. I don't know if these are especially good or well-built cars, but look at the pattern on this seat. I've never seen anything like it. That is just wacky. So I almost walked by this, but this is a bit sad to see. This here is, of course, Volvo XC90, which are, you know, decent enough cars. They're nice inside and all that, but not really a especially unique car. But I made the mistake of looking at the number of cylinders, and it's the very rare XC90 V8 with the Yamaha V8 engine, which is one of the best sounding V8s ever made. And I think actually is pretty similar, if not basically the same engine in some form, as the engine in the Noble M600. So, pretty special power plant right there. Also, you may have noticed in this video, there's been lots of noise from cars and screeching tires in the background this whole video. And although I haven't actually seen it yet, I'm guessing there's actually a drifting track right next to this, or really close by. So, I'm going to listen to that symphony the whole time I've been here. Got a nice oldie right here. I believe this is a Chrysler Imperial. Check that out. Ooh, the message center. Amazing, honestly, to see how much people's attitudes have changed in cars from wanting luxury to wanting sportiness. Been a noticeable, really substantial shift in the market with that. These first gen RAV4s are always pretty fun. And the two-door version, I've noticed, has become a bit of a collector's car, which I would assume has no sign of stopping. I think it's only going to keep being more and more of a collector's car. And every once in a while you'll see these for sale or on the road out here in California with an electric power plant. They did, I think it was actually factory, but it might not have been. But they did actually have an extremely early EV version of this. And of course the second, or two generations after this, or one generation after this, they also had that, which was also incredibly rare. Alright, these Mazda minivans are just everywhere today. I cannot get away from these damn things. Now this is an interesting vehicle. This appears, if I know my cars well enough, is I think a Kia K900, which the badging is gone, but I do think I'm correct. Forgotten the second it was on the market. Interesting car. Actually, Cadenza, which might be either another name for it or the next step down. I think it's pretty closely related to the Hyundai Equus and Genesis from like 2010. But these are kind of special. And very, very cheap. Though who knows about the reliability. I've heard so many different things with Kias and Hyundais. Man, I have been so surprised by the number of little German roadsters here today. Look at these two right here. That makes the count. I think there's one or two I didn't even film too. So that means there was like 2 or 3 Z3s and a Z4. And there's 3 or 4 of these. You never know what you're going to see here, that's for sure. But a lot of times the numbers of some of these cars here just doesn't line up with, you know, the averages of what you'd see on the street. It can be very surprising. But kind of cool. This here is a very interesting car. The Volvo C30. A car I was extremely fond of when I first started getting into cars. It's kind of an odd spot in the market. Kind of this premium, but also kind of base model vibe. In some ways, almost like a GR86 or something. Though I think probably most competed with something like a Mini Cooper, so kind of premium, but kind of economical, kind of like a, you know, a yuppie car basically. But something I was absolutely adored about this design was this rear hatchback with the all glass. The only other car I know of that does that is the Toyota Aygo, which is one of my favorite cars that we can't get here in the States. Now this is pretty fascinating. Not usually a car I find much interest in at all, but this Dodge Grand Caravan, well, can't even open it, is not only super moldy and gross, but also appears to have had a bit of a camper conversion with a ladder, which is surprising. This ladder is probably the most worthwhile piece to get off of it. That's actually pretty nice. Stainless steel. But looks to have a whole pop top added. Doesn't look like it's accessible from the inside, but still, it's pretty unique. This here is another one of these kind of strange, ooh, wow, that's a lot of water, attempting to be fancy Kias, the Kia Amante, which was always funny because it had such a intentionally fancy yet neutral look. Like basically, it was like looking at a Jaguar S-Type just with bad vision. But obviously this one's not a good example, but sort of luxurious, sort of. Though look at the wear of that. I mean, like the crack in the dashboard is astounding. Though who knows what kind of hoarders this car's been through. And I didn't notice this one on the way in, but this here is a Mercedes S-Class from the 90s. Ooh, that is nice. I don't know how I missed this one earlier when I walked by it, but we got here a Thunderbird. These are kind of interesting too because they're actually pretty closely based on the Jaguar XK8, because it was, you know, during the whole Ford ownership period. So I think that's actually a Jag V8. These are interesting cars. They're not like the most special, but at the same time they're honestly pretty fun. I feel like they're not quite old enough for people to really start caring about them deeply yet, but I'm sure they'll happen eventually. At least I hope so. And just like that, I think it's time to wrap up the video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I know me getting to walk around the Junkyard was definitely a fantastic way to spend a Sunday. But unfortunately this place is about to close, so I gotta get out of here. And I got like a 2-hour drive to go home, so it's gonna be a long one. But that being said, make sure to like the video because it really does help, and do subscribe, also incredibly helpful. But hopefully you guys will check out some of my other videos, and I will see you in the next one.